Good morning and welcome to Climate Matters, your monthly sustainability radio show brought to you by the City of Santa Fe. I'm your host, Neil Denton. I'm the Sustainability Officer for the city. And we come at you every fourth Wednesday, 8:30 to 9 a.m. on Suave Radio to talk about sustainability in and around Santa Fe. For this month's show, we're going to be talking about some record investments in community services from the City of Santa Fe. And joining me for that conversation is Julie Sanchez, Director of the Youth and Family Services Division here. Good morning, Julie.
Hi, good morning, Neil. It's so great to meet with you this morning.
Thanks for joining me on the show again. We always like to have you to talk about all the great stuff happening in your division. As I mentioned, this is a climate-themed radio show. We talk about sustainability. So just want to talk about all these, all the funding going towards people experiencing homelessness and public health, and a lot of other great stuff going on, and just make the connection to overall our sustainability plan here approved by governing body in 2018 isn't just about pollution. It's not just about greenhouse gas emissions. It's about sustaining the quality of life that we all experience here in Santa Fe for this generation and current generations. And the work you're doing in youth and family services is really impressive and always great to hear about. So why don't you tell us what's going on? Let's start with the funding that we learned about in July for a variety of contracts coming from the Human Services Committee.
Yeah, absolutely. So our Human Services Committee is one of our longest standing committees here at the City of Santa Fe. They actually have a dedicated revenue source of about 2% of the city's GRT. And all of that funding goes towards addressing adult health and social justice related issues in our community. And when we talk about health, we don't mean things like physical health. I mean, that's a part of it, but it's also environmental health, right? So it's the environment that folks are living in. It's transportation, it's food, it's all of these different pieces. And so we really fund towards those social determinants of health. We have, after coming through a really, devastating pandemic, we are actually starting to see an increase in our GRT locally. And so because of that, we were actually able to fund the most money that we ever have out of that group. And it's a huge record for us that we're incredibly proud of. We're funding around 14 nonprofit providers for the next 3 years, addressing all kinds of social determinants of health. Everything from homeless services, housing, food security, senior services. We can run the whole gamut of impactful programming coming to our community through these agencies. Part of our social determinants of health and part of our kind of strategic plan for the Human Services Committee is also to make sure that we provide navigation and resource services to our community through our nonprofit providers. So each one of those nonprofits has a navigator on staff that works within our Connect network to get folks connected into the services they need to really thrive in our community. And so that's a really great piece of that work that we've been doing over the last few years.
And Julie, you said this funding comes from GRT. What is GRT?
Oh, so GRT is our gross receipts tax. So whenever you and I go and spend money in our city, that funding actually comes back to my division in a few different pots. And one of those just happens to be through the Human Services Committee.
All right. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, it's the sales tax you pay at the register or when you hire someone to work on your house or what have you, that goes to the state and then trickles down to us to spend on programs like this. So it's about 3.9 million going to 14. Not all of that's going to these nonprofit organizations, right?
Yep, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
That's great. So people are, you might be going to the Food Depot or maybe you go to La Familia and you didn't know that the city was providing some funding to support those facilities. I saw that some funding went to YouthWorks. There's some partners that I work with on projects related to energy efficiency and rainwater catchment. So really glad to see they got some funding to help disconnected youth in accessing housing and food resources.
Yep.
And this is all administered through the umbrella that catches all of this is the Connect program. Why don't you tell the listeners about the Connect program real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So Connect really started actually over at Santa Fe County. I want to say in 2016, or excuse me, 2017. And they kind of used the what's called accountable health community model to develop a system in which individuals in a community have the ability to access resources in a really streamlined and efficient way. And all of this is measured through the social determinants of health. So again, transportation, food security, housing security, and all the other kind of determinants of health that I had talked about earlier. And so with the change in administration in 2018, Kira Ochoa came on board here at the city and brought Connect, the concept of Connect here to the city. And so we fully embraced it and adopted it and actually expanded the network by an additional, close to 60 nonprofit providers. Connect had a very humble beginning at the county. There were about 8 nonprofit providers, starting up the services and kind of building the network. And then when the city came on board, we really amplified the work and brought in a ton of new nonprofits that were just really dedicated to building the Connect network. And so every single individual that touches a city-funded organization has the ability to be screened. And that screening tool is universal, again, measuring social determinants of health. So they would ask you, hey, Neil, how are you doing with food? Have you been without food for the last 30 days? Yes or no? Is your housing stable? Are you safe? Yes or no? And with that, an individual would be flagged for different resources. And then we would actually be able to get that individual connected to resources that they needed. And it's a broad network. Right now we have about, I think it's 120 programs within Connect with roughly around 200 navigators, which is incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah, we also have the hospitals and the public schools on board. And so they also have navigators that they're using in their facilities and using the Connect network. So we've seen some amazing successes. Our nonprofit providers were very skeptical at first, and now they've just really fully embraced it. And so we have a lot of organizations who are coming on board who we're not even contracting with them. They're not receiving any city or county funding. They just see the value in being part of the network.
So let's say somebody's struggling to pay rent this month. Is that a reason they should call the Connect program?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, someone's struggling to provide food. What are some other reasons that someone should contact Connect?
If you have issues accessing childcare, if you're at risk for facing eviction, if you are in a situation where you may be unsafe, if there's violence in the household, all of these are reasons to contact the Connect network. You can do that via 211. That'll give you direct line into the network, or you can also do a self-service form through santafenm.gov/connect.
Great. And when people call 211, can they speak in English or Spanish?
Yes, absolutely. So the person on the other line is bilingual and can do a screening in both English and Spanish.
That's great. And I saw the city and the county, I think it was the city and the county just received an award for the Connect program. Is that right?
Yes, we did. We received a national recognition through, I think it's the National Conference on Counties. Oh boy.
The National Association of Counties.
Thank you. National Association of Counties. So there's going to be a recognition ceremony here in the next couple of weeks that we're really excited that this work is being recognized nationally. And there's a lot of interest also statewide too, which is exciting for this very humble program that started very grassroots and has continued to grow.
So it's pretty unique. It's not every city where they have a program like this.
Mhm.
I know, some cities have like the 411 information line, but this is a bit more than that with the 250 navigators connecting you to 60 different programs. I saw that some of the funding is going to the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center to provide immigration and navigation services. Are you familiar with what they do?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they are fantastic allies in this work, and they reach populations that a lot of nonprofits don't serve. And so it was really important for us to make sure that we had an equitable lens with the populations we were targeting, and making sure that we were targeting a lot of our populations that are generally underserved. And they're one of those that specifically target that. So
yeah, I know it can be really hard for recently arrived immigrants. Really glad to see 287,000 going towards the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center from this. And so you were talking about how 2% goes towards the Human Services Committee. So these this type of funding happens on an annual basis.
So these grants are 3 years. So the total award is over 3 years. So we're looking at probably 1.2 million-ish a year over the next 3 years. We do set aside funding, small parts of funding for what's called our Innovation and Small Grant Fund, because we recognize that a lot of things pop up in our communities, a lot of great ideas on addressing social determinants of health. And so we want to make sure that we have funding available to be able to support those initiatives.
All right, over the next 3 years. That's great, 3.9 million. And you were telling me about a larger number for our guaranteed income pilot with funding coming from the American Rescue Plan. Did you say 7 million?
So in total, my humble little division received around 7.1 million in American Rescue Plan Act money. And that's in a combination of city and county funded projects. So we're entering into a memorandum of understanding with the county around direct cash assistance, in which they'll be contributing about 2.1 million to support direct cash assistance coming in to the city as well as to residents of the county.
So tell us more about direct cash assistance. How do you qualify? Who receives it? I thought at first it was for people going to the community college. Is that right?
So you are not wrong. We have a guaranteed income pilot project that has been running through my office for the last close to a year now. And that was targeted towards Santa Fe Community College young parents. And so we're actually going to be creating a second pilot project, another guaranteed income pilot project that's going to be a little bit different and targeting a little different population. And so we're actually in discussion of what that's going to look like. And that should be launching in early spring of next year. Our direct cash assistance project is, like it says, it's direct cash. Generally, it's one time per year. And we'll be targeting individuals who meet eligibility criteria, which include like income, but also those who've been affected by the pandemic, since this is ARPA funding. And so that can go towards anybody. It's really meant for middle income individuals who may have, been furloughed, who may have lost hours, who may have had some sort of hardship that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic going back to March of 2020.
Wow, that's really interesting to hear that about middle income individuals, because we hear about programs for low to moderate income households. It might be a family of 4 making less than $55,000 a year. But if you're in that, I'm just kind of spitballing numbers here, in that like $55,000 to $80,000 a year for a family of 4 range, it can still be extremely hard to get by in Santa Fe, and that demographic can be overlooked when it comes to social determinants of health. So it's really interesting that demographic will qualify for this. So when will it be available?
So that one, we're still working on the contract. So we'll hope hopefully get it launched here in fall. We do have a vendor that's been selected. We're just in negotiations. So the contract again should be fully implemented in fall. It'll be coming through the governing body for approval. So once that happens, we'll be able to officially publicize and launch that that particular pool of funding.
And that came through the American Rescue Plan. We have another act that was just passed that's going to have a big impact on climate change. The Inflation Reduction Act, the record investment and spending, and we're going to see those dollars go to work here. I'm working on creating a Santa Fe Clean Energy Fund. I think you've heard me talk about this. Mm-hmm. We're going to be helping income qualified households afford solar energy and energy efficiency, and actually helping all households afford those rooftop solar energy. But those who aren't income qualified won't receive the same subsidies as those who need it more. So it's an exciting time where all this funding is coming from the federal government to help us make a big difference here at the municipal level. So let's talk more about the record investments in community services. Is there, one of these contracts in particular you'd like to highlight for the listeners?
They're all so good.
Just provide some examples of the way people see funding. One I see here is LifeLink. I saw them, they won an award, the Santa Fe New Mexican, what are they called? They do these annual awards. Oh, the 10 who made a difference. I think the person who started LifeLink, I saw a highlight at one of those ceremonies. Do you want to talk about what LifeLink does here in Santa Fe?
Sure, I would love to. So they're one of those nonprofit organizations that we've had a really close partnership over the last, decade, since before I was here at the city. They provide an array of services, everything from, permanent supportive housing to, transitional housing, to really comprehensive behavioral health services. They've also been a huge partner on outreach to our unsheltered community. And they've worked really closely with them on, all their behavioral health events and making sure that the city is in support of them. Their funding is for a navigator around housing related services. So again, another social determinant of health is housing and also behavioral health. And so I think with their new funding, they're going to be hiring another navigator position that's going to be solely focused on getting individuals stabilized in permanent housing. So whether that is a good example is an individual who received a housing voucher, so Section 8, or is transitioning from being an unsheltered homelessness into being in an apartment or in a home. They would be able to provide navigation services to support that transition, and then also to support that individual with that being stable within that housing. Because one of the things that we've seen and what the data points to is that those first 6 months are really key for that individual to continue to stay permanently. In general, a lot of folks have a difficult time with the transition and lose their housing within those first 6 months. So it's really important that we continue support services after those 6 months. So theirs is particular to that navigation. Another great group that I want to highlight is Esperanza Shelter.
Yeah.
So they also have a navigator for folks entering into their domestic violence shelter. And again, transitions are incredibly difficult. With that population, it generally takes around 8 times to leave your abuser.
Wow.
And so 8 times. And so their housing their navigator also is partially an advocate for those families. And so they will work to stabilize the families, get the individuals, the adults into services, and make sure that if there was a need for housing services or, behavioral health services, that there was a navigator to support them through that, and to be kind of a trusted partner in getting them out of that situation.
That's incredible. And if anyone's experiencing, if they're afraid for their safety at home, they can call Connect or 911, right?
Yep.
Of course, 911. I'm just clarifying that they can also call Connect.
Yeah.
If it's bad enough, you should call 911. But that's great that the Esperanza Shelter got some funding here. I believe they're right around the corner from my office here.
Mm-hmm.
So I see them when I go on walks and whatnot. So these navigators, they'll, like the LifeLink navigator you're talking about, they check in like once a week, something like that, see how things are going, see how maybe the job search is going, or how people are settling in, stuff like that.
Yeah, you could think of it as a bit like case management. For them, it's kind of a high intensity given the population that they're serving. So it would be things like getting signed up for SSI, making sure folks are going to their medical appointments, making sure that folks are, keeping their behavioral health appointments. And then it could be something like helping them get connected to a job. Part of our Connect network is we have flexible funding that's available for all of our contractors. And that flexible funding could be used to like buy work clothes, could be used to fix tires, it could be used to help stabilize somebody's income. Like maybe they lost their job and they just need help paying rent for a month before they can get their first paycheck. And that's a huge important piece of Connect, is making sure that there's flexible funds to meet the needs of the clients where they're at, and to make sure that regardless of their situation, that they're able to bounce back and help to build, resiliency within that client. So, and that's an important piece of how Connect operates, and how our contracts work with both the city and the county.
I'm really glad to hear about these navigators, because just maybe sticking someone in Section 8 housing and saying you're good to go. That's been proven not to be what's going to really help people realize their full potential.
Mm-hmm.
I want to live in a city. I want to live in a society where people are able to recognize their full potential, and we're not leaving people behind and just saying, well, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with living under the bridge or wherever you ended up. So love to see all these city services to help people get a helping hand and get back into like mainstream society where you're contributing and as a result of this, I'm sure we see a lot of economic stimulus as people are realizing their full potential and earning an income and spending that money. I just wanted to point that out because there is a big influx of tax dollars going out into the economy. It's not just the city running these services, it's people who are employed at these nonprofits, and then all the people that they help.
Mm-hmm.
And once they have better social, financial, health resources, and then it's better for everyone. And when you think about climate change, as we experience more intense floods, more intense fires, higher heat, which is not as pronounced here in Santa Fe, but still, if you don't have cooling at your residence, it can get pretty bad. People with means can deal with that. They can pay for their air conditioning. They can pay to rebuild after they're flooded or their house is destroyed with a fire. But a lot of people can't, and those people are experiencing the impacts of the changing climate, and most of them have contributed the least to it. So it's really important when we're spending these dollars to, as I mentioned earlier, improve energy efficiency, install solar panels and things like that, that we're doing it in an equitable way, and we make sure that everybody, regardless of their income, regardless of their zip code, they're able to see the benefits of the clean energy transition. So that's that. I'll get off my soapbox. Just want to make the connection. You're listening to Climate Matters with the City of Santa Fe. Since we are talking about sustainability, I wanted to make the connection to climate, and we're talking with Julie Sanchez. She's the Youth and Family Services Division Director here at the city about some record investments that the city has made in community services, as well as some federal funding that we received for the Guaranteed Income Pilot. So about that Guaranteed Income Pilot, we've been receiving checks from the state of New Mexico here and there. They just show up in the mail. Maybe you knew they were coming, maybe they weren't. Is that how this is going to work?
For ARPA funding?
For the guaranteed income pilot. People have to apply for it, right?
Yeah, folks do. So our main target is we're gonna have folks in the Connect network kind of be the first one. So there's going to be 2 applications. One is going to be for folks in the general city county community, and then the second one is really going to be focused on individuals who are in our Connect network, the folks that are reaching out who really need support, who may not be eligible for any other funding coming in because maybe they didn't meet the criteria, maybe they were too high of income. This funding would be able to support those individuals.
All right, and that'll be, you mentioned we're selecting a contractor. What do you think? 3 months? Is that a reasonable time frame, or?
Well, Neil, you work for the city, so
6 months, 2 years?
Yeah, my goal in-house is 3 months. So I'm gonna, make sure we get the negotiations done as quickly as possible, and then make sure we start getting on the calendar for approvals through our committee approval process.
And if you're listening, you want to make sure you know about that, you should probably visit the city website and just sign up to receive our news releases when they go out. I'm sure we'll be putting out a news release about that when the time is right. So that's a good way to stay connected. Julie, is there anything else you'd like to share about the Youth and Family Services Division, or? There's a lot going on.
There's a lot. There always is. One of the other things that I want to make note of that's incredibly important to our community is we're going to be putting out eviction prevention funding. We'll have about $2 million or so, again, in direct cash assistance, but specifically for those who are at risk for evictions. We're also going to be planning some more eviction prevention workshops through our city attorney's office. And so I just want to make sure folks stay tuned for that.
All right, great. And what's the best way for them to stay tuned?
So again, signing up for press releases, and then we'll be making sure that we post things via social network and try to get the word out as much as we can to get that funding into the community.
All right, yeah, if you're on Facebook, find the City of Santa Fe's page. We do a lot of updates there as well. So thank you so much for joining me for this show, Julie. This has been Climate Matters, your monthly sustainability radio show. I'll be back the 4th Wednesday of September, 8:30 to 9, and you can always find video recordings of these shows online on YouTube, looking under Suave Radio. I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.
Take care.